Hello and welcome to Challenge Solutions. My name is Caitlyn, and in this video, I'll be sharing 10 travel tips for the blind and visually impaired. Most of these tips will apply to flying specifically, but some of them can apply to road trips and other methods of travel as well. My first tip is to be super organized and make sure you pack bags that are going to be easy for you to carry and navigate through the airport with. It's super important that you're really organized about how you pack things because you need to be able to find things easily when you need them and in a timely fashion. I also recommend making a packing list so that you can check off items as you put them in your bags and make sure you end up having everything that you need. You also need to make sure that you pick bags that are going to be easy for you to personally carry and navigate through the airport with, because if you end up having the wrong bag, it can make things unnecessarily difficult. Personally, I recommend using one of those suitcases with the spinner wheels that go in all directions and has a really long handle that will pull out, and you can just drag it behind you and it will kind of move with you and turn corners really easily. This is way easier than kind of your typical suitcase that just has two wheels that roll in one direction. Those you kind of have to pick up and reposition every time you round a sharp corner, and that is not fun when you're also trying to use a cane or a guide dog or do sighted guide with someone. I also recommend using a backpack or a crossbody bag of some sort for your carry-on so that it will leave your hands free as much as possible. This makes it easier to do sighted guide if you need to, or use a cane and show people your ID or boarding pass or carry something in that hand. And it's doubly important if you are a guide dog user because you obviously need to keep your left hand on your dog's harness, and your dog's probably going to want treats for all the good work he's doing, and if you've got something in your right hand, you're not going to be able to give him all the cookies he wants, and that will be a problem. So I definitely recommend using a backpack or a crossbody bag to keep your hands free, not only when you're flying, but in life in general. It just makes everything better as a blind person trying to navigate the world independently if you've got your hands free as much as possible. I carry a backpack or a crossbody messenger bag literally everywhere I go. If you would like more packing tips, I have done a video specifically on that for Challenge Solutions, and that will be linked in the description. Feel free to check it out if you think that would be helpful for you. Tip number 2, know where your bags are at all times. This is super important as a blind traveler because you can't just put your bags down and keep an eye on them to make sure nobody takes off with them. I recommend at the very least knowing where your bags are supposed to be at all times, but preferably maintaining physical contact with them. If I am sitting in the airport for an extended period of time, I will put my backpack on the ground in front of me and loop my ankle through the strap. That way, if anybody tries to take off with it, I'm gonna know about it and can take immediate action. Also, if I'm carrying a smaller, lighter crossbody bag, I usually just leave that slung across my shoulder in the chair next to me. That way, it'll be harder for people to take off with it. Of course, they could still cut the strap, but I would know if they tried to do so. When you're actually on the plane itself, if you can, I recommend putting your carry-on luggage under the seat in front of you. That way it's within easy reach. You can get things out of it independently without much hassle if you need to, and you can just grab it when it's time to disembark from the plane and not have to depend on anyone else to help you find it. You're also gonna know if anybody tries to mess with it, and it's gonna be harder for people to mess with it. However, as a guide dog user, I don't have the luxury of putting my bags under the seat in front of me most of the time because my dog needs that space. Therefore, my stuff has to go in the overhead bins. So if you are in that position and your stuff also has to go in the overhead bins, you need to make sure that you know which overhead bin it's in and generally where it is in that overhead bin. I unfortunately have to have help getting my bags into the overhead because I am a tiny human and I cannot easily sling my heavy bags up into that overhead bin, especially when there are a lot of people in my near vicinity. So I can't put it up there myself and know where it is, but I always make sure to ask the flight attendant who puts it up there which bin it's in and generally where to find it. I also recommend having some sort of identifier on your luggage, a visual identifier, and something that you can feel, and also an audio tracker of some sort if you want to be super extra, like an AirTag or a tile. I have keychains all over the backpack that I travel with. I'm using them as zipper pulls, and this not only helps me like know exactly which keychain to grab to open which pocket for what thing, but it's also a good visual and tactile identifier for my bag. This is really important in case you do have to ask a sightling in your vicinity to help you find your bag for some reason. Tip number 3, use Apple Wallet for your boarding passes, but also make sure you print copies of your boarding passes because sometimes technology does weird things and fails us. Apple Wallet is a super useful tool for blind and visually impaired travelers. Most airlines will now let you add your boarding passes to Apple Wallet, and then you can just bring them up like you would with Apple Pay. VoiceOver will tell you which boarding pass is currently active, and you don't have to mess with different pieces of paper floating around in your bag that you're going to have to show to various people at various points along your travels. However, I also recommend printing your boarding passes because sometimes technology does weird things and you don't want to miss your flight because Apple Wallet did something strange and didn't work for some reason. Tip number 4, save your itinerary in an accessible format. This one doesn't need a ton of explanation. It's really important that you know where you're supposed to be when, and it's really important that you are able to read that easily and aren't having to swipe through a ton of different information from a ton of different sources. I kind of dump everything into my Notes app or my calendar app on my phone. That is my preferred method because then it's all together and I'm not having to scroll through different emails from different travel agencies or anything like that. Just make sure you have an easy way of reading your travel itinerary. This is really important if you're traveling independently, obviously, but even if you are traveling with other people, you need to have some way of knowing where you're supposed to be when, just in case you get separated from those people and need to reunite with them at a certain point along your journey. Tip number 5, allow extra travel time. Even if you are a very seasoned traveler and you travel all the time, as a blind person, there are going to be instances where you are held up along your travels, either because you get lost in the airport, a gate agent doesn't come to get you in time, any number of things can happen. So I recommend allowing a little extra layover time to get from gate to gate. That way you don't have to worry as much about missing your flight. This goes for everything, not just flying. I allow extra time to get to my college classes just in case I run into construction on my walk to school, or in case somebody grabs me trying to be helpful but really disorients me. You never know what's going to happen, and it's better to have extra downtime than to be late and miss your flight. Tip number 6, make sure you're pre-board. As a passenger with a disability, you are allowed to pre-board your aircraft, and you definitely want to take advantage of this because, trust me, boarding amidst the rush of everyone else who is also trying to board that airplane and put their stuff in the overhead bins is not a pleasant experience. You want to be the first one on the plane and the last one off the plane whenever possible, just to save yourself a lot of hassle and prevent yourself from having to deal with a lot of sighted people who are in a hurry. Ideally, the people at the gate should make sure that you are included in the pre-boarding passengers, but you may have to go talk to them and say, hey, I'm blind, I need to pre-board. If you're traveling independently, you may want someone to help you get settled on the plane, so you need to tell them that ahead of time. Or if you're traveling with other people, you can let them know that you're blind and you have someone with you and you need to pre-board the aircraft. Tip number 7, keep your tickets, ID, and any other important paperwork organized and in an easily accessible location. You're gonna need your boarding passes multiple times over the course of your journey. Also your ID card, and if you're traveling with a guide dog, the Department of Transportation now requires that you carry extra service animal registration forms in order to fly. I recommend carrying a copy of that paperwork for every airport that you're going to pass through, because even though it goes in their system at check-in, sometimes it gets lost and people are going to ask questions. So if you've got the forms, you can hand them the forms and save yourself a lot of trouble and explanation. You need to make sure that you have all of this in an easily accessible location so you can grab it fast, and also make sure you know what is what in there and you don't shuffle your papers around. I have a pocket on the outside of my backpack that I kind of put all of that stuff in. I also have a traveler's notebook, which is like a little leather notebook that has elastic elastic bands inside, and you can put different inserts on the elastic bands. So I have sort of a plastic folder configuration in there, and I put my boarding passes, my ID, and a couple copies of that guide dog paperwork just in that notebook so I can grab it out. I know what order it's supposed to be in. I can flip through it and get what I need super quick and easy. I've also used a wallet with different pockets before, and that works super well. And you can just put them in a pocket in your bag and make sure you know what order everything is in. Or if you get super lucky, everything will feel different and you'll know what it is by touch anyway. Just make sure you have a way of identifying that and can grab it quickly when you need it. Tip number 8. This one kind of goes without saying and doesn't need a ton of explanation either, but make sure you keep your phone and your mobility aid of choice, be it a white cane or a Labrador, easily accessible and within your reach at all times. It's really important to keep your phone on you as a blind traveler because, one, you can use apps like Blind Square and Aira, and some airports will have apps with indoor navigation features, but 2, if you need to call for help, you can call for help. So I like to keep my phone in my jeans pocket when I'm flying. That way it is on my person. I don't have to worry about it falling out of a bag or getting lost in a bag. I can grab it quickly whenever I need it. Just make sure you've got your phone within easy reach at all times, and obviously you don't want to lose your cane or your guide dog. So make sure you've got contact with those at all times. Don't let anybody try to take your cane away from you, or especially your guide dog. Super important. You don't want to lose those. Tip number 9. I mentioned this briefly in the last tip, but make use of Aira and GPS apps. As I said previously, some airports have indoor navigation features that can be super helpful as a blind traveler, and you can use those to get from point to point. But also Aira can be super beneficial in airport settings. If you're unfamiliar, Aira is a visual interpreting service that allows you to connect with sighted agents via your phone's camera. It works sort of like a FaceTime call, and you can ask them to help you find different points in the airport. They can see your location and they can pull up a map of the airport and help you get to different points, and they can also help you navigate around people and small children in the floor and bags and all kinds of other things that you will encounter in an airport setting. Aira is super useful for so many different things, not just air travel, and even though it is a bit expensive, you do have to pay for a subscription that gets you a certain amount of minutes per month. I think it is worth every penny due to the amount of ease and independence that it grants me, especially as a blind traveler. So I will link that in the description if you are unfamiliar with it. Tip number 10. Advocate for your needs, thank the good humans who help you, and nicely tell the bad humans what they can do better. You're gonna encounter a lot of different people throughout your journeys through different airports. You're probably gonna be dealing with gate agents and flight attendants and people working different desks throughout the airport, and some of them are going to be nicer and more helpful than others. It's really important that you are able to tell them specifically what you need, that you can instruct them on doing a sighted guide should the need arise, and that you just communicate with them how they can best help you, because they may not know. You may be the first blind person they ever encounter, so you're going to have to tell them how to best help you to make everybody's life easier. As I said, some of them are going to be nicer and more helpful than others. And if you get one that is just super amazing, I like to just thank them and let them know how they helped you and that they made your day so much better. And I also tip everyone who helps me, especially if they guide me a long distance in the airport. I carry $1 bills in the outside pocket of my bag, and I usually give them $1 or $2 in the event that you get a bad one who just doesn't want to be helpful and is just there for a paycheck and literally does not care and is not being respectful of you or listening to the things that you are telling them that you need. It is perfectly okay to tell them what they did wrong. They need to know how to improve their interactions with disabled passengers. If no one tells them how they can do their job better, then they're never going to change their attitude and the way they interact with disabled passengers. Of course, you want to be respectful about this. Even if they are very disrespectful to you, you want to be the bigger person and say, hey, you did a really bad job. Here's how to do it better next time. Obviously in nicer, more prettier words. I also don't tip them if they don't at least try to respect me as a blind traveler and give me the things that I need that will make my travels easier. I think of this just like waiters in a restaurant, if they do a bad job, you don't tip them as much. The same goes for gate agents in airports. If they don't try, then I don't tip. And I have even told a couple who were just super, super disrespectful to me that I had tip money for them, but now I wasn't going to give it to them because they didn't listen to anything that I said. So if you really want to smart off to them, go for it. Maybe they'll be nicer to the next blind traveler they encounter. But just know that you're going to have to advocate. You're going to get unhelpful people who don't want to be there, and it's all just part of the blindy travel experience. That is the last travel tip I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up so that the YouTube algorithm continues to know that we exist. Also, please share the link to this video so that more people can find our channel. If you have any questions or suggestions for future content, please leave them in the comments below or send us an email via the contact form on challengesolutions.org. Also, if you have any blindy travel tips that I missed, please drop those in the comments below so that we can all learn from each other. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more content like this, please check out our blog, podcast, and the rest of this YouTube channel. We just did an episode of the Challenge Solutions podcast dedicated to travel, in which Macy, Cole, and I discussed all of our travel experiences. So definitely check that out if you want to hear more about traveling as a visually impaired person. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.